Welcome to Om Times TV, a division of Om Times Media and Broadcasting. Welcome to What is Going Om, for new thought from the edge of Om. Each week on Om Times flagship radio show, veteran broadcaster, author, and media consultant Sandy Sedgbeer conducts thought-provoking interviews with inspirational authors, artists, musicians, scientists, speakers, and filmmakers who are working at the point where spirituality and science meet consciousness at the very edge of Om. Here is your host, Sandy Sedgbeer.
Hello and welcome. My introduction to this week's show is going to be a little longer than normal, but bear with me because what you're about to hear could change everything you thought you knew about who you are, why you're here, and the imminent leap that you, me, and all of humanity have the opportunity to take. So a little background information is in order. In 1986, a book was published called Understanding Your Life Through Colour, Metaphysical Concepts in Colour and Aura. Its author, Nancy Ann Tappy, was born with a brain trait of interconnected sensory information, also known as synesthesia. Nancy saw colour around all living objects and she could taste shapes. And since the late 60s, she had been noticing that many of the children being born displayed an unusual indigo colour in their aura. 12 years later, after witnessing and researching this growing phenomenon, lecturer, author, and Cryon channeler Lee Carroll and Jan Tober published their groundbreaking book, The Indigo Children. The New Kids Have Arrived, which resonated with so many parents across the globe that it became a bestseller. By 2003, so many parents were sharing their stories about their indigo kids that I launched a magazine called Children of the New Earth to curate and ground the tsunami of emerging information about these new humans who were displaying such unusual abilities. They were being described as the next stage in human evolution. Around the same period, another more concerning phenomenon was occurring. Autism was on the rise, from roughly 1 in 500 children being diagnosed on the spectrum in 1995 to 1 in 150 in 2000, when the CDC started officially tracking the stats, to 1 in 36 by 2020. Nancy Ann Tappy devoted the rest of her life and career to the study of colour, consciousness, awareness, and their applications to the human personality, and teaching new paradigms of consciousness and the timelessness of metaphysics. In 2005, I met Susie Miller, a highly skilled former pediatric speech-language pathologist whose life was radically transformed in 1999 by a breakthrough encounter with a 4-year-old non-verbal autistic child whose ability to communicate with her telepathically gave her a new understanding of and way of working with these children. Susie Miller's book, Awesomism, A New Way to Understand the Diagnosis of Autism, shares that story and many others that revolutionized our thinking about this rapidly increasing population of highly sensitive, gifted children, who they are, why they're here, and what we have to learn from them. Susie Miller's experience is not pseudo-scientific BS. She worked with the late and highly respected physicist Dr. William Tiller and his team of statisticians on specific studies that we don't have time to go into here, but are truly groundbreaking and perception shifting. Now, fast forward to just a few weeks ago, when I interviewed clinical psychologist, mystic, spiritual teacher, and author Christina Donnell about her work and her books, Encounters with Living Language, Surrendering to the Power of Words, and transcendent dreaming, stepping into our human potential. And I discovered that the 92 consciousness expanding experiences with words and with living language that she experienced between 1997 and 2015, inspired by a message from the invisible world, joined some dots for me relating to Susie Miller's pioneering work. So why am I telling you this, and what does it all mean? All the scientists, physicists, cosmologists, astrologers, channels, spiritual teachers, authors, and researchers that I've been interviewing these past few years agree that a massive awakening is taking place, and that we are on the verge of not just a transformation, but a metamorphosis. In short, an evolutionary mutation is taking place. A new human is emerging, and it is the new kids, the Indigo kids, the Gen Xers, the autistic population, the energetically sensitive kids that have been laying the foundation for who we are becoming and the new world that is unfolding. So that's enough from me. Now let's hear more from Christina Donnell and Susie Miller. Ladies, welcome. Good to have you with us today. I'm going to start with you, Susie. You coined the word awesomism and changed the way people view autism. Should we be looking at autism as the prototype or the foundational template for the new human?
Absolutely. And I love the way that's worded too, because this is it. We've got a whole population of children that have been increasingly coming to this planet. As you said, the statistics are going up. And we can either look at that through the lens of a quote unquote disorder and kind of try to put them back in an old box, or we can look at this as an evolutionary leap, which is the way in which I choose to see it. And choose to see it that way, not just because I choose it, but because one kid after another, one child after another has demonstrated to me that these children they have a way of being in the world. They have an awareness of the world. They see the world through a lens that we as a humanity have not typically seen through. You might say they see through wholeness where we were taught to see through linearity or separation. And so absolutely, it's like these children absolutely are a prototype for a new human. And the more curious we become about the way they are perceiving the world and understanding the world, the more we get to understand that this is where we're all going. We're all moving away from being primarily cognitive processors and moving into being processors of felt perception, right? We're moving into that ability to perceive reality through a much more subtle world and subtle realm. And they are absolutely leading the way in us doing that.
Yeah. Christina, tell us about evolution and your own experiences with words and language and how that comes together with what Susie has been telling us.
You always ask such difficult questions, Sandy. My thoughts about evolution. And I want to tag on here to Susie. You know, having trained in the Andes with the Caro Indians, descendants of the Inca, who do not live in linear time and do not live in a me cosmology. They live in a earth, world, cosmic cosmology. They don't understand the sense of an I. Their prophecy is that in 100,000 years, we will move from Homo sapien to Homo luminous. And Susie, Sandy, myself, we are watching that emergence unfold. And who knows when this prophecy came out? And, you know, will it be 100,000 years? What I love about evolution, that comes from source is that it makes sure something doesn't happen too quickly. And I feel that's exactly what is going on from the source of creation. While we have this deep, deep, horrible, horrific, dehumanizing tumult that is vitriolic in our world right now, and the news follows in the us and them and duality, this is becoming a smaller and smaller portion of what once was for so many years. While there's these new emergences just slowly happening on the planet. And I can talk more about that. I can talk about how living language, because language itself has been evolving since the beginning. In the beginning was the word. It evolves. And my experience with language is it's evolving right with the new emergences in humanity that are entering the planet. And so we have the old holding on by their fingernails, as vitriolic and horrible as it is. But we have this large emergence that is just slowly and quietly making itself onto the planet, where even the Gen Z, the 20 to 24-year-olds, they don't know yet the fundament of what they value, but they no longer value what us baby boomers and our fundament once was of value. So you just see it across the board, whether we call it disordered, whether we call it a mutation, whether we call it because of COVID, our youth are growing up with less and less of an us and them, and the fundament of what is of value to them is shifting. They're asking, what is the meaning of life at a really young age? And I think it's ushering in all of these tributaries for what evolution does. It mutates. And what I would say, Susie, and I'm so thankful for your work in autism and within neurodivergent, because right now we call that disordered. Mm-hmm. And the only reason it is disordered is because it cannot come in and be adaptive in a soundbite, noisy culture. But it is absolutely here, and it is absolutely here in an extraordinary strength where it is bringing the eternal, incarnating it in time. They're just having difficulty coming into time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I read a book a long time ago, and somebody said that there was a time when we communicated telepathically. And it was only when we started learning language that we had to separate our brain, because we had to be able to create a structure to be able to speak.
Yes.
It seems to me that in that evolutionary leap, we went into eons of separation. Yes. And that what we're coming into now is less about the me and more about the we. And I find it very interesting that, many of these new kids choose not to speak.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And they have a different language.
Yeah. And yet interconnected in that more subtle world, in that more subtle way than we've really ever been able to be in our separation. So, one child after another, absolutely telepathic. And as you communicate with these kids, either through telepathy or verbally or through their spelling to communicate or those kinds of technologies, they are sharing that they are interconnected, that they know the thoughts and feelings of those around them, that they're interconnected with other individuals who are on the spectrum that are in completely different places and spaces in the world. So you might say, our internet, in the outer world, they have that in the inner world. And they're demonstrating to us, as often as we'll allow it, that is something that we too all have access to, that we can step into those more subtle forms of communication and interact from those places. And it really, it hits me, Sandy, because I've had so many of these kids say to me that, when parents or somebody asks, well, why aren't we using verbal communication, or why can't you bring that telepathic communication into a verbal expression? And so often the kids will say to me, what do you all do with words? You use words to separate. What do you do with words? You use words to hide what is authentic and real and true and vibrant and loving and kind within you, right? We use it to hide. We've used language in our conditioning to everything but unity. And the kids are saying, when you become authentic and really connected to what you're saying, then understanding what's actually been said, does that unify, does that separate, will show up. We'll become more verbal, we'll become more interconnected. But until then, we're going to ask you to come to us because we're inviting you to a more unified field. Yeah. And it just blows me away every single time. I mean, it's true. And I love, Christina, your work with the language, because the essence of those words, again, you've said it isn't just the words, it's the sound, it's the vibration, it's the information that's running through that is the important the important aspect of that communication. And these kids know that more than just about any population I've seen so far.
Yeah, yes, it is their mother tongue.
Mm-hmm.
And they know when someone is speaking from that place where, a word has 1,000 roots that go into the invisible with unseen archetypes and forces. And if someone can be in touch there, these children know it.
Mm-hmm.
And Susie, and Sandy, I just may want to read, because Susie, it supports so beautifully what you just said. An email I received from a 15-year-old nonverbal speaker whose mother read the book Living Language. You will love this, because we see exactly how multidimensional and the unit of consciousness in which they are residing. And at 15, never spoken a word, only through letterboarding is communicating. And as we know, through letterboarding, they're communicating at a level that exceeds humanity and exceeds where language goes. And you will see that in this few lines. So after her mother was reading Living Language, she says, Christina, I need to attend to top time. Top time means soaring, Christina. And everyone that is neurodivergent or autistic who writes me says soaring and falling in consciousness. I call it transported in consciousness. They all call it soaring and falling. I'll be very curious, Susie, what you think. Then she says, I'm amazed by the naming title, she means of the book, Anomalous with Near-Death Experience. Then she tells me who she is. I initiate sonic rattle frequency in others' space. That's who I am. I initiate sonic rattle frequency in other space. Time, same as ours, outside our era.
Mm-hmm.
A say effect, and I'm not sure what a say means. I am a soldier in the inner space.
Mm-hmm.
She is 15 years old. In most human experience, no attention, ever a soaring force. I am total time. I essay the universe. algorithms and organize the solar allies. I am soaring in OA. And then she tells me OA is a frequency. It's a sonic frequency.
Mhm.
It's also same sound root as word away, which is that soaring and falling. But I think it just gives this beautiful window using language through letterboarding of the multidimensionality of where the eternal can make it into the temporal and language can accommodate it.
Absolutely. The kids have always said, we'll meet you in the space in between.
Yes, yes,
And,
yes.
you know, that space in between and in probing them on that, you know, this timeless nature of being, you know, the timeless nature of being that comes about as we tap into who we are in truth. And when we have experiences like you did, that like I did, what we both did, where we are shifted from that linear perspective of reality to what lies literally beyond time and space,
Mhm.
the kids will meet us there. That they will meet us there. That is where they soar. That is where they are alive. That is where they are vibrant. That is where they know. And quite frankly, it's where each and every one of us knows as well.
Yes.
We know from the place of that timeless nature of being. We know from that space in between. You might say even the space in between the words.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Much more information there and awareness there than in the cognitive process of speaking or understanding. Yeah. And I just, it has blown me away over time to have experiences of that timeless nature of being and having those experiences at the hands of these kids. You know, when somebody has the capacity that they have and one is open to that capacity, they easily can transport us to that space in between. They can easily give us some kind of transcendent experience. And it takes
Yes.
someone who is living from that place to be able to offer that experience to another. Yeah.
Yes. And like this 15-year-old,
Yeah.
I
Living
have
from
this
that
sonic
space.
rattle
Mhm.
frequency in other space that is why I'm here.
Yes.
And we both know, because we are multidimensional in our own being and walk between and understand the eternal incarnates in the temporal. And we're bridge walkers here between duality and what's coming onto the planet. But this space within the space,
Mhm.
the invisible and the enticing and exciting cosmic forces underlying what is manifesting into the world is in this space within the space. And these children live there.
Mhm.
And anyone who has a multidimensional experience tastes it. And I do think this is the mutation. It just simply is the progression from linear to the surround song, cosmic song of the eternal in the temporal. Both are beautiful and coexisting together.
Right. Right. Yeah. The kids often speak about like our linear reality moving in through that mutation, moving into a more spherical reality or a separation reality, moving into a more unified field. And linear and spherical are also not separate, right? They're
They're all from source. They're
right.
all from
They're all
source.
sort of two ends of the same spectrum.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. And there was There was a young man that I'm actually good friends with his mother at this point because we've been around the block for quite some time together. And I went to visit them once, and this young man is also nonverbal. He uses a letter board, spells to communicate. And we went to visit, and Jackson is his name. He speaks several languages,
Yes.
understands several languages. He also has written information.
And Susie, I'm sorry to interrupt you. He speaks several languages without being introduced to them by his parents, correct?
100%, absolutely.
Yep.
And
This is what's new coming out of the planet. Yes.
And this happens more often than we know, I think.
Yes.
So yes, he does speak several languages. He also started to provide information about something that he called infinity physics. And this is all when he was like an early teenager, and I went to visit him one day, and I was sitting on a park bench, in a park with his mother. He was walking around doing what he does, in the,
Yes.
covering himself up, moving around. And he walked over to me at one point, and he just took a hold of my hand. So in the 3D physical world, Jackson is an artist, and he, like I said, he's nonverbal. And he grabbed my hand, and in the moment he grabbed my hand, we were literally walking through another door. It was like a shamanic kind of experience.
Yes.
We're walking through another door, and as we walk through another door, I recognize in that moment Jackson's verbally communicating with me. We are in a different realm, a different dimension where he is completely able to verbally speak. So he walks me into this space, which looks like an art studio. He tells me in this space why he creates art, what his art does when he has mom send that picture to that person, that picture to that person. And we're in this experience. It was just as natural as it could be. And then all of a sudden, I feel his mother, she's tapping me on the leg, on the park bench. And Jackson verbally says to me, "My mom needs you. My mom wants to know what's wrong with you." Because I was frozen, I was Jackson in that world. So, and he was holding onto my hand the whole time. So he starts to release his grip on my hand a little bit. And as he does, my consciousness comes back into the body that's sitting on the bench. I turn to mom, and she goes, "What's going on? You haven't spoken for the last few minutes. What's happening?" And I said, "I'm with Jackson. I'll be back." And then he tightens up on my hand, and I can feel myself go back into that experience. He's communicating, we're having this, and then all of a sudden he lets go and I'm back, So again, here we have an individual that is living beyond time and space as most of us would know it, has the capacity to invite me into that world, has the capacity to reorient that reality so that I can speak back to this other.
I love that. Yes.
Right. And again, I'm just to perceive that through the lens of a disorder is something that I just absolutely cannot do anymore, because there have been so many of those kinds of experiences that one might consider beyond time and space that confirm to me that this is indeed an evolutionary leap.
It is.
This is indeed a new level of consciousness. So
yes. I'm going to hold you both there. I'm sure you've got something to say in response, Christina, but we do need to go to a break. You're listening to What is Going On. I'm Sandy Sedgbeer, and I am speaking with clinical psychologist, mystic, spiritual teacher, and author Christina Donnell. and Awesomism pioneer, integration specialist, and CEO and founder of Blue Star Education and Research, Susie Miller. And we're talking about the mass awakening that is occurring and the role of the new kids, the energetically sensitive and autistic populations, the role that they are playing in the next stage in human evolution. We'll be back with more from Susie and Christina after this break.
Om Times TV. Imagine becoming a super influencer. Reinvent yourself, invest in your brand, and then manifest your success with a robust spheric approach. Om Times Media and Broadcasting offers a unique and multifaceted way to become the spiritual and conscious influencer you deserve to be by putting your message across our powerful platform with its proven record of integrity and excellence. Through our produced shows, Om Times offers the opportunity to become a social media TV personality, a radio show host, an Om Times magazine columnist, and a syndicated podcaster, all in one shot. By live streaming your show on Om Times TV and broadcasting it across the extensive Om Times radio and TV networks, you become more than a host. You become an ambassador and a force for positive change. Om Times. Open yourself to the possibilities.
Hello, I'm Sandy Sedgbeer, host of Om Times flagship radio show, What Is Going On? And as an author, editor, and 13 times book judge who's read thousands of books and interviewed hundreds of authors, I'm constantly asked what's really worth reading and what's not. So I created the No BS Spiritual Book Club to help you save time and money by picking the brains of discerning names who've walked this path before you. There's no catch, no fees, and no BS. Just an ever-growing library of 10 best spiritual book lists from some of your favourite authors and teachers, plus free book excerpts, audios and video interviews with people like Don Miguel Ruiz Jr., David G., Lee Harris, Mark Nepo and more. From well-known classics to hidden gems you've never heard of, it's the only no BS guide to the best spiritual books to enlighten your journey of self-discovery. So why not join the club? Get inspired and save money at the nobsspiritualbookclub.com.
There are 16 million children struggling with hunger in America. That's 1 in 5 daughters, sons, neighbors, and classmates who don't know where their next meal is coming from. Yet billions of pounds of good food go to waste every year. It's time we do something about it. Feeding America is a nationwide network of food banks that helps provide meals to millions of kids and families in need. Visit feedingamerica.org to help them feed even more. Together, we can solve hunger. Together, we're feeding America.
Welcome back. Christina, is there something you would like to say in response to what Susie shared before the break?
Yes, Susie. I lament, like you do, that we are calling that which is new and emerging a disorder on the planet. I lament that equally. And I don't know, because I'm a baby boomer, I can have this monstrous energy inside of me of urgency of the midwifery or the pushing of that which is new emerging forward. But I know I know that is just an old energy. And I trust source, I trust creation, I trust mutation, I trust evolution. And I know the extraordinary that is beginning to happen, that those hanging on by their fingertips in the vitriolic us and them would implode if it came gushing forth from the source, of which is why creation takes its time. And I always have to say to myself, I have to respect linear time, because source is not only made of linear time. It's a polysynchronous time where it's tending the manifestation in duality, in unity, in what's beyond unity, and the extinction of planets, extinction of species. It's tending all of that simultaneously. And sometimes I just have to come back there and land there and be in the eternal moment of it to say, it's all unfolding as it should. It is perfect because all is one. But I have to come back because I, as a baby boomer, I have urgency that, I say to my publicist, it becomes monstrous and I feel it and I can quell it down, but it's constitutional nature. It doesn't come from the eternal and source, which everything is unfolding perfectly. And we are going to call things disorders right now because that is the us and them and the duality and the soundbite and noisy culture we're living in. It just is. And because I'm somebody who loves the word, it's more difficult for me because it's such a conceptualization, representation, and no feeling, sensory, transporting the consciousness to anywhere else. And yet we have the normal curve. We both have come from science. The normal curve in the 68% can't move quickly.
Mm-hmm.
It's
true. And it is also so amazingly encouraging to, I'm sure for both of us, I mean, we've had certain experiences, maybe a little ahead of the curve. So, and as we have those experiences.
Oh, honey, not ahead of the curve. We are 2 standard deviations out. We are around the mountain and going, oh, look at what's out here.
Yeah.
And then the children are right out there with us.
Exactly. And I love that statement. And the part that I do get excited about is that, when I watch what has transpired since 1999 to now, it's like, there are people all over the world now that are having a conversation about children diagnosed on the spectrum from the gift of that expression versus from the disorder of that expression. And yes, that part of that bell curve that's still there and still kind of in that separation energy, yes, it exists. But I just love the fact that, if you, after doing this for quite some time, you do get to see that there are people all over the world that are stepping into a whole nother state of consciousness around who this population is. And when you look at what has changed medically, scientifically, educationally, since these children arrived, their very presence is invoking something new within each and every one of us. That's the whole being changed simply because they exist.
That's the 15-year-old that I read earlier. This is why I'm here, right?
Yes.
I'm here in the inner space as a sonic rattle for others.
Yes. I love that statement.
Yes. And what I also caught, Susie, which I really appreciated, is that you would have noted the language has changed.
100%.
Yeah, and I noted that when you said it, and because it tells me language is doing its part in the evolution. So beautiful.
One thing that I think many people watching this might want to know is, what have these children got that we haven't? And what can we look forward to when we begin to make this evolutionary leap and join them amongst the disordered, which will no longer be called a disorder. It'll be called, hey, this is normal, everybody. What could we look forward to? What can they show us?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Christina, do you want to go first? Do you want me to add?
I would love to. I would love to. There is something, okay, for me, a history of transcendent dreaming, and then I've been a mystic from birth, the 92 language illuminations, the culmination of that, a destiny over 60 years, now really quite deeply embodied, pragmatic, where the eternal is incarnating every moment in the temporal.
Mm-hmm.
Here is the greatest gift, that in every moment where you attune, because the world is still sound bites, noisy and crazy, so you can go right back into the duality, but everywhere where you drop down and attune, there's this extraordinary participatory experience with a larger continuum and the source and everything around you, that it's so easy for us to say it's unity consciousness or non-dual awareness, but that to me is not a mind concept. It's the experience of being in unity,
Mm-hmm.
not from the me cosmology, but the we, the larger continuum, and being participatory and knowing you're participatory in that experience because your awareness has expanded to that dimension and has washed out to sea and felt comfortable to be there in our everyday duality world. And I just call them two different mother tongues.
Mm-hmm.
But when you can experience that, I have to say,
Mm-hmm.
well-being, I don't need to say joy. Our world is kind of horrific right now, but well-being and in that participation of the whole and that which is greater is absolutely a grounding force.
Mm-hmm.
That to me is the beauty. Great question, Sandy. Beautiful question.
Yeah. And to answer that question, Sandy, is like, what are they experiencing, or what do they quote unquote have that we don't? It's one, I think we all have this. It's just that we have been very much conditioned to not pay attention to this. And this is, I would say, something more akin to sensory perception, a more subtle awareness of what is taking place within. And there are varying experiences and expressions of that. But from my vantage point anyway, part of the reasons why we perceive these children as having so many sensory issues, you might say, is because they're much more finely tuned in to the sensory experience. And because they're more finely tuned to the sensory experience, they can be either reactive or responsive to it. But when we really begin to understand that the words that I have come to use so far anyway is that felt perception, the perception of an experience, the perception of a reality, that felt knowing of that, to me, is much more akin to knowing or awareness than it is to thinking about something. Yeah.
Yes.
And
Yes.
and that in and of itself, as far as I can tell so far, is absolutely part of our evolutionary shift.
Mm-hmm.
Well, when we look at what is going on in the world, what has been going on in the world for eons, we do understand that misunderstanding is the cause of all strife and conflict. And the misunderstanding comes about because we are trying to perceive something through a particular lens, through the words that are shared. And what I learned from you is what these kids have is it's not the words, it's the frequency that carries the meaning of a communication. And if we could cut out words and get straight to that frequency, we could change the world in a heartbeat.
And I mean, I'm a lover of words too. So I'm a little hesitant to get rid of the words. What I am curious about, though, is again, not what the words are, but what is the consciousness behind those words? What is the experience behind those words? Are those words coming from a place that is like 10 people can say the same phrase?
Yes.
And each one of those people saying that phrase is going to mean something different. It's going to come across in a different way. It's going to be heard in a different way, because those words are the words, but the consciousness with which those words are spoken and the experience behind that is very different. Yeah.
Beautifully said. Beautifully said.
Yeah.
Mm.
So, Christine,
Yes.
can you add
Thank
something?
you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
We
Boom,
have
boom, boom, boom. It's
We
not
have-
about the word. It's about, because the word is in its evolution too.
Yes.
It's about moving beyond conceptualizing. It's about, if evolution is occurring, I don't know this to be true, but if we have our reptilian brain, our limbic brain, our neocortex, Homo erectus was so extraordinary in its direct perception and sensory system to navigate the world. And then the neocortex was a mutation. It developed. Thought came on the world. And I'm sure they thought that was a disorder until it wasn't a disorder.
Exactly.
It's how evolution works. But we lost somewhere in this evolution the connection between the direct perception from the somatic sensory system and the neocortex, including that even our neurodivergent are in the somatic sensory, but the neocortex and all of these connections, I think, are part of the mutation to move, I'm just going to say it, Homo sapien to Homo luminous, and it will take time. But I think all of that is happening because, it's hard to explain to somebody how language can open trap doors in your somatic sensory system and take you into the eternal that incarnates in the temporal world. Because if it stays at the conceptual level, people don't know how to actually have an experience with a word. And Susie, you so beautifully said it. It is a sensory experience. It's the taste of a word. It's the taste of a certain time of the day. It's the taste of walking in the woods or in a meadow or near. It's the taste, the touch, the hearing. It's acute sensory perception. And I really wonder, with evolution, the neocortex becoming more dominant, it quieted our limbic or reptilian that we have such a bad connotation on, but it was an extraordinary sensory, like it was adaptive and had direct perception. So we have it in us to return there. And that's why I say these interior trap doors are right inside of us.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
Well, and there's a very different, the concept of something like joy or love, the word, that concept of that, and the felt perception of joy or love, that's a difference between a knowing and a thinking,
It is.
Yeah.
It is. It is. The thinking is a love that has sank on what I call the superficial consciousness.
Mhm.
The deeper love is the absolute, you are completely participatory with the larger continuum at the whole.
Yeah.
Those are two different, very experiences.
Mm. This conversation is one that could go on for hours, days, weeks, and we still wouldn't get even halfway through it. We have about 5 or 6 minutes left. What I would like both of you to share is, what can we do from the place that most of us are at right now? What can we do not only to support these children practically and energetically, but also to prepare ourselves for becoming more like them? Susie, do you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, it's something that I talk to parents about all day, every day. And this came directly from the kids because I asked that same question. It's like, what can we do to help? What can we do to kind of bridge this gap? And they took me initially right to, again, how do we feel? What are we perceiving in our bodies? What are we noticing? Instead of just thinking our way through life, the kids are inviting us to have a more sensory experience through life, to feel our way through life, you might say. And so, as that very initial bridge, most of the kids will suggest to their parents, you know, instead of trying to fix us, try to make us better so that you can feel better. Let's get better at feeling. Let's get better at noticing. So we've just triggered you, or we've just brought something up for you. Can we at least start to be present to what that felt perception actually is? What might that remind us of? It just creates a nice beginning step, right? To start relying on felt perception instead of start continually relying on thought. Yeah. So, and I've seen some pretty amazing things happen when people just notice, oh my gosh, this is what I'm feeling when this happens. Oh my gosh, that reminds me of something else that I've felt in my own earlier development. Oh my gosh, is he just showing me that? Or is she just showing me that? Yes. And the minute they get that, all of a sudden that external expression very often is no longer needed, right? Because the kids have done their job. They've plugged us back into that, at least some aspect of our felt perception.
Christina, anything you want to add? We've got about 2 minutes.
How do I want to add? I'm in agreement with Susie about felt experience. We have 5 senses, and they're the only way in which we can actually experience the world. And somewhere, conceptualization, soundbite culture, noisy culture, for many of us, has really blotted out coming back home to a sensory experience, to taste the different times of the day, as I said before, to hear things you've not heard before, to hear that which is close, your heartbeat, and that which is far away, and everything that fills in the sound, which increases acuity of your sensory experience. This is the way home to moving through the whole that moves us out of duality into a greater perception. It opens trap doors in the cellular nature of the body where their direct perception can happen. And my question is for everyone out there listening, because are you a baby boomer? Are you a Gen Z? Are you a Gen X? Are you a millennial? Is this something your light is on the planet to move toward? Because if it is, you will enjoy this interview.
Yeah, I'm going to have to leave it there. I just want one thing that Susie wrote in a recent newsletter. I want to leave our viewers with. You said 2024 is set to be an exciting year as the first wave of new world experiences begins to be obviously available to more of the collective. One by one, as we step further into unity consciousness, we are creating energetic spaces for others to do the same. This absolutely creates a powerful invitation for all beings and definitely creates an opportunity for the energetically sensitive of this planet to be present with greater ease. Ladies, I would love to have you come back and continue this conversation in a month or so, maybe 2 months, as we get into 2024 and we start to feel for ourselves the energy and where we're heading.
And thank you, Susie. I love your newsletter. I am a wind under that wind. I'm a breath under the wing of that wind.
Okay, I have to do our outro now. I have to tell people Christina's books, Encounters with Living Language, Surrendering to the Power of Words, are available from Transcendent Dreaming, Stepping into Our Human Potential, both published by Winds of Change Books, and Susie's book, Awesomeism, A New Way to Understand the Diagnosis of Autism, is available from Amazon. You can check out both of them at their website, susiemiller.com and christinadonnell.com. That's it for this week. I'm Sandy Sedgbeer. I'll be back at the same time next week with another episode of What is Going On. And thank you, ladies, for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sue. Thank you, Sandy.